All right, let's start with your list, Rick. I'll mention the names, and then we can go through them at how you see best. Byron Murphy, the second, the defensive tackle out of Texas. We talked a lot about him. I asked you a month or so ago if he's a first-round pick. You said, I don't see why not. And there's a lot of buzz about him being a first-round pick. I think we agreed that he's better than Elijah Cansey coming out.
Yes, because I think he's stronger at the point versus the run, plays with tremendous leverage. I'm excited to see him against some of these offensive linemen because I think it's a really good group of offensive line in the one-on-one pass rush drills. But I think this kid has a combination, even though he's a little undersized, plays stronger than his size, but such an explosive athlete and such an explosive inside pass rusher. And if he has a good week down there, which I anticipate he will, that I don't see why he doesn't slide into the first round somewhere in the bottom of the first round. Too hard to find defensive guys like this. And to me, as the season unfolded, it's not an extremely strong defensive tackle class. I mean, you got Newton at Illinois, and I'm not surprised if he has a strong Senior Bowl week that this kid doesn't end up as a second defensive tackle off the board.
And by the way, Elijah Cansey had a great rookie season too, just for as an idea of what that might look like next year for Byron. The other thing about the Texas defensive tackles, I like him over T'Vondre Sweat, even though because T'Vondre Sweat might be a 2-down player for all we know, even though he's 330 or 340. I thought he was more effective, Byron Young, than his teammate.
Yeah, Sweat's a really good athlete for his size. Can't move him off the spot, but teams are also going to look for inline pass rushers, which are hard to find. And what a difference that they can make in a game if you can get some guys that can rush from the inside. And I think this kid's really going to help himself going forward through this pre-draft process based on how he played this season.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch him play. All right, Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo. We've talked about him a good bit. In fact, we had a 5-star Apple review to talk about Quinyon after we talked about him, so we'll talk about him again here. And by the way, just as a preview, if you want us to talk about one of your favorite players who's draft eligible, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we will talk about any FBS or FCS player that's on your mind. Just let us know. Quinyon, the last time we talked about him, nothing's changed because the season's over. Long ball skills, pass breakup skills. You've described his footwork as raw. So what do you want to see this week or next week in Mobile?
I just want to see him move around physically because you can see it on tape. But he is the prototype size, speed athlete that you look for at the position. The unique ball skills. I think when we talked about the first game I watched him was against Illinois this year. He had 3 tackles and a PBU. Then he had like 5 PBUs against San Jose State. And I was like, wow, this guy is jumping off the tape a little bit, and played solid all the way through the MAC schedule. And so I think this guy has an opportunity because now you had both Alabama corners come out. You have, King that we talked about, but I think this guy, Lassiter, was it Lassiter?
Amari Lassiter out of Georgia.
So there's a bunch of corners. I don't think there's a clear-cut number 1 corner in this class unless you think something differently.
Our guy Nate Wiggins as well.
Yeah. Well, you've been in love with him since last summer.
Yeah.
So, but this kid has an opportunity to go down to Senior Bowl, face some pretty good receivers, and let's see if he doesn't not come into the conversation as one of the top corners, which I think he is right now coming out this year's draft.
I don't want to call it a cautionary tale, but just something to keep in mind how we fall in love with these guys. Last year, Darius Rush out of South Carolina had a fantastic Senior Bowl as a cornerback, like off the charts, great in the one-on-one drills. Didn't I think it was a 5th-round pick, maybe.
Yeah, he because his tape didn't equate to what we saw down at the Senior Bowl. So there's an example of a kid who had a fantastic Senior Bowl. Everybody was talking about him, and then I believe he went to the combine and ran in the 4.3s at the combine. He got drafted, was it by Indy in the 5th round, got cut, was claimed by Kansas City, was cut, then put on their practice squad, and then Pittsburgh stole him off Kansas City's practice squad and put him on the 53. So his story's not yet told, but there was a guy that really stuck out down at the Senior Bowl but teams relied on what they saw on tape. That's why he went on in the 5th round, because you would have said this guy at least has to go on Friday the way he played during the Senior Bowl practice week. So that's why it's so important that you get what you need to get at the Senior Bowl, but you always have to remember what you've seen and how you evaluate him through his career on tape.
Yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind as you go through the process, because oh my gosh, you think I love Spencer Rattler and Nate Wiggins. I was Darius Rush's biggest fan after that week, because it was a fun week to watch. I'd never seen anything like that in those one-on-one drills. But again,
no, and you were slobbering all over me, and I was like, just act like you've been here at the Senior Bowl and bring some binoculars the next time you come.
That was the problem. I used binoculars to watch Darius Rush. I was like, oh my gosh, this kid's good.
My binoculars.
Your binoculars. That's right. Your name is actually written on them. All right. Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, the wide receiver out of Georgia. Much of the conversations about Brock Bowers and even Ladd McConkey. But what'd you think about this guy?
Yeah, this guy was a little bit of a pleasant surprise. As I was going through the Georgia tape, and I did Ladd, and then I was like, who's this other kid? And so you may think I'm crazy.
Oh, boy.
Did you watch this kid yet?
I haven't watched him yet. He's on. I'll watch him this weekend. I think it's the schedule.
Yeah, he's long. He's athletic. He has that flexibility in his upper body to make a lot of unique catches. Catches in his hands. He's a little bit of a weaver after the catch, but he does have speed. I think he's going to run faster, but if I had to make a comparison, he reminded me a little of Wicks last year.
Oh, that's not a bad comp.
No, when I watched him on tape. So he was a pleasant surprise. If I was trying to hammer out as much of the Senior Bowl, I didn't get through them all, but this kid kind of was like, yeah, I want to make sure I get my eyes on him down at the Senior Bowl.
So I think Dontavian Wicks ended up running in the 4.5s, not fast. Does he play? And Dontavian actually plays faster than that. I would imagine you think he plays faster than 4.55 or whatever?
Yeah, this kid's a little bit of a long strider like Wicks, but I think he builds up speed. They run him on a lot of deep crossing routes, and you see him create separation the longer the route is. And I really liked his hands and the way he's able to adjust to the ball.
All right. Next up, Jackson Powers Johnson. Watched him last night. I like this guy.
Hey.
He's a little spark plug. He has a little edge to him.
Yeah, this kid's only 20 years old. So
center out of Oregon, by the way. Let me make that clear for people listening.
And this was another guy that I've heard. I didn't watch him till this week, and I was impressed with his athleticism. I was impressed with his power at the point. I was impressed with his grit and the way he tries to finish, especially in the run game. I think technically he's got a ways to go yet, but he was more athletic to me than we watched Tippmann last year from Wisconsin, than we watched John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota. I thought this guy had a little more athleticism, but he played with that kind of grit.
Yeah. I'm looking at his stats here that I wrote down so I wouldn't forget. 0 sacks allowed last season, 0 sacks allowed in actually over 1,300 snaps over the last 3 years. So,
well, take in consideration the offense too.
That's true, but I mean, he ain't getting blown up.
No.
Let me see here. He feels like an early day 2 guy to me. I know that some of the media mock drafts have him going in the first round. He felt like a day 2 guy.
I think he's a Friday guy. I think he's a second round guy right now. So I just don't see any. We'll get into it more as we go through the podcast, but I don't think he's going to pass up a Barton or someone like that who I really liked as a football player.
Yeah, I watched Graham again the other day. I came around on him. The game over the summer I didn't love him. I rewatched him, and I was like, okay, this guy's got it.
Pretty good football player.
Yeah. He's a little bit of the Zion Johnson arc that I talked about. Like the arm issue, is that the length why he can't the issue why he can't play left tackle?
Yeah, that'll be the concern. So it's just like when Mock went to the Senior Bowl last year.
Yeah.
They put him guard right away because of his arm length, even though he was a left tackle at North Dakota State.
And Peter Skoronski had a great start to his season when he was healthy for the Titans, moving from left tackle at Northwestern to left guard for Tennessee. So there's precedent there. All right, one more guy for you out of Houston Christian, edge rusher, Jayx Hunt. And let's see, I didn't love him, and that can change. But based on what I watched, I wanted to see a little more. So why'd you put him on this list?
because I had to put 5 on the list and 5 guys that I was intrigued to see at the Senior Bowl, and this
Okay.
kid was intriguing to me. You did 6, I did 5. I follow the rules, you don't. But this kid is long. He's athletic. He can run. He's playing against, nothing to discredit your athleticism, but you could probably have a better chance of blocking him than some of the guys that were trying to block him.
Tomato cans, is that what you're trying to say?
I'm just saying this is a kid that everybody will be excited to see because you see the length. I think you see the athleticism. You see the speed. You see that he is as raw as they come with learning how to use his hands, how to play, all that stuff. He's got a ways to go. But is this one of those guys from a small school that shows up athletically, just like the guy, the safety you fell in love with last year at the Senior Bowl from Sac State?
Marty Mapu.
Yeah. But guys like this, it's the biggest stage for him because coming from Texas Christian, I don't think he's played against the Alabamas or any of the other teams.
Houston Christian, not even Texas Christian.
Well, Houston Christian.
Yeah.
Sorry. But so I'm anxious just to see this raw athlete and how far he is away from actually making an NFL roster if he's too big a project. That's why I put him on this list.
No, and the point is an important one because you should never dismiss anyone based on a couple games, or it's a whole process. And in the past, I'd be like, okay, well, I've watched this player, or this player had like Gardner Minshew did not have a great Senior Bowl. That's not the end all be all. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go into it, so you can't just rely on that. And it's funny, I watched all of Jayx Hunt's sacks, and they basically played out as you described them. He's beaten guys who probably won't be playing football after their college careers are over. There was a couple of he was left unblocked for some reason. He's just destroying the quarterback. So that's not his problem. I mean, he's doing what he's being asked to do.
He plays hard.
Yeah, he does.
He's an aggressive kid. And it's like, he's playing against guys who go into their coach and say, Coach, what do I need to work on? And the coach said, your degree, because
by the way, Hunt transferred from Cornell. So nothing else. He's a smart dude. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, and I think you sort of hinted at it, Debo wanted us to mention, Jayx Hunt is probably going to be like a late day 3 undrafted free agent territory unless he splashes, but he has an opportunity to make a roster.
Right, but these are the guys you want to see. Now you can get a true measure of how far he is away.
Yeah,
going
that's
up
a good point.
against the senior. That's what, I was glad that guys like this get invited to the Senior Bowl. They may not be as ahead or farther along. There's other guys farther along that maybe are not here, but this kid has, out of any of the kids we've talked about, there's guys jockeying for where they're going to get potentially drafted. This kid either is going to put himself on the radar or not. This is the type of kid that if he shows up down at the Senior Bowl, we better go back and do some more work on him.
Another example, played another position last year, Tyson Bagent. Like, we were like, okay, this guy is overwhelmed. He obviously out of his element, Division II Shepherd, and it took him a while to get his act together. He started a few football games. He did a really good job for the Bears based on where he came and how far he came to get there.
Yep.
So never say never. Don't sleep on these kids. All right. When we come back, we'll get to the list that includes a bonus for you people, because I like the listeners and the viewers, and I want to give them something special despite Rick's. All right, Rick, let's start at the top. Bo Nix. This quarterback, no disrespect to last year's quarterback Senior Bowl class, this class is stacked. This is going to be fun to watch. And I talked about Tyson Bagent, another name that I'll mention that has a chance to help himself in a different regard, but certainly given the pre-draft or the pre-fall buzz prior to the 2023 college season, Joe Milton. So we'll see what happens for him, because he probably could make a bigger move than anyone if he comes out there and balls out. But I want to talk about Bo Nix right now, who's been in college for 8 or 9 years, I believe. Transferred from Auburn, had 2 good years at Oregon. He does a lot of things really well. He does so many things above average that I think we sleep on him and underrate him. But I feel like I've said this since the fall, and I don't know if you're as rich on him as I am, but I feel like he's a second-round pick all day long. You can bring him in. He can play spot duty right away, and maybe a year from now he's your starter. I don't know, but a lot of things I like about Bo Nix.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see him throw live. There's no question about his athleticism. The biggest thing, I don't know if you'll get a true feel for it because of the limitations of schematic, just his decision making.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest question I have on him. And they may get a lot of that in the interview process while they're down there. And that'll be addressed as he goes through the combine and top 30s or whatever, and teams do film study and ask him what he's seeing and why he made this decision. So I think all the physical, there's nothing physically wrong with him that I have any issues with. I think my biggest concern is the decision making.
And he played in the bowl game.
And he played in the bowl game, which moved him up around for me.
He beat the pants off of Liberty for no good reason. Yeah, I want to see how this process goes for him, because I think maybe we're not talking enough about him because we spent a lot of time talking about the other quarterbacks, and I get that. But he is sort of quietly had 2 really good solid seasons at Oregon, and there has been some first-round media buzz. We'll see how teams feel about him as we get through the process here. All right, next up, I mentioned him, and you mentioned him a moment ago, talking about his teammate at Georgia, Ladd McConkey. He might be one of my favorite players in this draft class. He runs routes with urgency. He gets up the line of scrimmage like he has somewhere to be. And a lot of times when you watch wide receivers, they don't run the routes with the urgency you want, and sometimes can mess up the timing of what the offense is trying to do. That said, he also understands changing speeds to create separation and setting up the defensive back. He has great hands. He has a big catch radius. Again, I would draft him in the second round all day long in a crowded group of wide receivers that go in the second round and feel great about it.
Yeah, if he runs what I think he's going to run, because he has acceleration after the catch. There's a couple of games that I watched on him that he pulls away from the defenders that are trying to close on him. He can outrun angles. I think he is fast, but he plays fast too. There are guys that time fast that don't play fast. This kid, I think, is going to run fast and play. I think he's potentially a top 50 pick or even higher.
All right. Not knowing what you're going to say, let's make a first dollar bet here. I'm going to set the over-under on the 40 time for Ladd McConkey at 4.45.
I'll take under.
All right, Debo, mark it down. And the first name that came to mind, I'm not trying to be a jerk, when you said time fast, doesn't play quite that fast, Alec Pierce. Like Alec Pierce ran in the 4.3s, I think. I want him to explode, and he showed glimpses towards the end of the season. But that's a guy that I was just disappointed. All right.
He's a little stiff.
Ennis Rakestraw Jr. And Debo asked me about him the other day. And I was like, yeah, I have him as a top 50 guy, but there's some first-round buzz about this young man, too, in the media. We'll find out together. I think he's like a mid to late second-round pick right now, but who knows what that means. He's undersized, but like Devin Witherspoon, he plays like he weighs 30 pounds heavier. Like he's looking to run through guys. He's really good in coverage. My concern with him, and I want to see how this looks out over the course of the next 91 days, is deep speed, because it could be a situation where that affects his draft stock. But again, you have to remind yourself, does he play faster than he times, Brian Branch, or is it a situation where it's the reverse of that? But I think he at times seemed like he was a little nervous about getting beaten deep. But there's a lot to like. Targeted 31 times, 0 interceptions, had 2 PBUs. But he's a physical presence, and now I liked a lot about his game.
Yeah, I did this kid this morning because I did his partner yesterday, Abrams Drain.
Yeah,
another good football. They had 2 good corners at Missouri. But this kid was a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't know what to expect. The one thing I know is that he is an aggressive, will come up, even though he may be slight of frame. He's not afraid to come up and whack you. And he plays with a sense of urgency. He is one of the most, just watching his mannerisms after a play, he is all ball. And competitive. It's any corner that I watched this year, this kid was the most competitive. And I'm reading the tea leaves on his mannerisms and how hard that he plays. I think that he has some technical issues that he needs to work on. I think that he needs to be a little bit more patient, especially when they press him in man coverage and some of the things. I think he just gets so wound up that just relax, dude. Just mirror the guy coming out. You want to like put your hands on him. You want to beat the hell out of him. Just relax and let it come to you sometimes. But He is a tone setter on defense, which is hard to find on at this position. We talked about Weatherspoon and those kids in Illinois being tone setters where they're physical, even though they may be a little undersized. I don't think he's as smooth as Witherspoon is when he came out last year. But this kid, I think, is a Friday pick. But this kid was fun to watch because he would have fit just in my just good football player category because I love watching him play so much.
I'm laughing because the Kansas State game, he was trying to fight through a pick on the red zone slant, and he was yelling and screaming at his teammates for not helping out. And I was thinking about that when you mentioned that.
It was yelling at the official, and then they threw the flag that it was a pick, and then. But he's competitive as hell, and
that's what you want. That's what you want, especially that position. Like you said, there's not a lot of that at the cornerback position, or at least to that level. Even Devin Witherspoon's like, yeah, take a deep breath. You're gonna kill yourself doing that. All right, next up, Dwayne Carter out of Duke, defensive lineman. Another twitched up young man who plays with some power, plays with good leverage, finds himself in the backfield quite often, can stand up to double teams. I was pleasantly surprised. The Notre Dame game, he had a few snaps against Joe Alt when he's playing outside. Now, Alt can certainly hold his own, but Dwayne gave him a run for his money. It was fun to watch that matchup the few times it happened. Had a fumble recovery against UConn, ran it back to the house 26 yards, so he's a pretty good athlete in space. I even got a comp for this one. Let me back up. Let me give my comp for Ladd McConkey. Hold on to your squeeze ball here. I really like this comp for Ladd McConkey. Emmanuel Sanders.
Okay.
You made worse faces. You had to think about it. All right. So stew on that for a little bit. So Dwayne Carter, again, he feels like
better. His route running to me, it was like when Riggs came out of Alabama, but he has better hands than Riggs.
Than who?
Who is a receiver? Are we talking about McConkey? Who are we talking about? We're talking about.
Yeah, I was talking about Ladd. Just the Manny Sanders Cup.
Henry Ruggs you're talking about.
Oh, Henry Ruggs. Gotcha. Okay.
Ruggs. Yeah. The route running reminded me of Henry Ruggs, but the hands are much better.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And now Debo just flashed a picture of Dwayne Carter. So we're back on Dwayne Carter, the interior defensive lineman at Duke. I just remembered that I had that comp for Ladd. I want to throw that out at you because I'll tell you my comp for Dwayne Carter after you tell me about him. I don't want to get you off your game.
I think he was one of the 5-star reviews, or I remember talking about him during the season. So we did him during the fall. This guy is not a defensive end to me. I think he's going to have to slide inside.
Yeah.
I think that he's twitchy. He plays hard. We watched the Notre Dame game. I thought he flashed there. I think this is one of those guys that they need to move inside down at the Senior Bowl, and let's see how he performs in tighter quarters where he has to work through bumpers between the center and guard tackle. But I like this kid's motor. I like this kid's energy that he plays with. I think he can be disruptive. I think he was more disruptive than productive, but he was another good football player.
Day 2 for me.
Let's see.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to go third. I'm going to go fourth instead of third right now.
All right. Yeah, I think he was fun. The other thing I was thinking about as if I get years into this draft stuff and looking back at guys like Justin Madubuike coming out of Texas A&M, I was like, my goodness, this kid is twitched up. Took him 2 or 3 years to figure it out. Now he's about to get paid a lot of money. And sometimes you just got to be patient and see what happens. So I'll give you my comp real quick for Dwayne Carter, and then you can throw your squeeze ball against the wall. Larry Ogunjobi. Oh, you hated that one, Debo.
Yeah, that's great, Ryan. You're how long we've been doing this? How many episodes?
115.
Okay. Well, you're getting better.
I was going to say, I feel like I'm getting better, right?
Yeah, you are getting better. Last year at this time, it was horrible. At least you're getting in the ballpark range.
Yeah. I have a few ups on the chart, and then a down, then a few ups.
Yeah.
All right.
Last year, they were all downs.
Yeah, last year, I thought you were gonna quit.
Oh, I would never quit. It's too fun.
Yeah, where else are you going to get comps like this? All right. Next up, this is a guy. You talked about Jayx Hunt. This is my Jayx Hunt. James Williams, the safety / linebacker. He's listed as a linebacker on the roster. The Senior Bowl, played all over the place. A lot of deep safety too. A lot of slot for Miami. I didn't check as per the Rick Spielman scouting rules. I didn't check his height or weight, but until after I watched him, he's listed at 6'5". He is a tall drink of water, and he will slap the doo-doo out of you. Like when he comes downhill, he's looking to hit something. He actually plays, I thought, pretty under control coming downhill in terms of wrapping up and tackling. Showed a little sideline to sideline ability in terms of running guys down. Maybe he's a Kyle Duggar type. Maybe he's a Marty Mapu type in terms of where you put him as a chess piece. Hufanga type out of San Francisco by way of USC. But I was pleasantly surprised with this guy.
Yeah, and I've just done one game on him, so I'm not going to sit here and BS my way through this evaluation. But the way that you described him, it sounded a little bit like how Dallas uses Curse.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see why
we drafted Curse, and I mean we drafted him late. He didn't go till 7th round, but he was a 6'4", played slot, played safety, played all over the place. And I can't make that comparison. I'm just listening to you. So to help you on a comparison, if I'm sitting in front of the room and you happen to sitting in my seat in the corner,
yeah,
I would say, oh, that kind of reminded me a little of how we saw Curse when he.
I just made that note, so I'm going to steal that. So when you yell at me about that comp, I can remind you, and Debo can remind you the comp came from you.
Well, let me do the kid, and I'm going to tell you you're totally off.
That's true too. That's true. But I want to see why he's listed as a linebacker. Is he stiffer than I saw in space? Like what's the reason? But we'll find out. And he was fun though. He was a fun player. It feels like the way the NFL is going in terms of guys playing sort of amorphous positions. He feels like he fits that perfectly. All right, and finally, Javon Foster out of Missouri, offensive tackle, left tackle only the last 3 seasons, 850 plus snaps each season at the position, 1 sack allowed, 12 hurries in 2023 in 13 games. This dude is enormous, like long arm, long legged. But when I checked the weight, he's 6'5", 319. Like he looked like he weighed 340. He's got a big butt. I thought he's like 335, 340. Moved really well. I like the way he was able to mirror and pass protection. He was moving people off the ball in the run game. Was more athletic than I thought. Pretty good against speed rushers. I was impressed. I hadn't watched Javon. I'd seen his name, but I hadn't watched him all year. Another Missouri player. I don't know if you had an opportunity to watch him yet.
I did.
What'd you think? Because I know there are mixed reviews.
I'm on the other side of you.
Yeah, why? I want to know why, because I didn't see it.
Because he lined up at left tackle. I thought he had athletic limitations at left tackle, especially in pass pro when he got out of position. You can't rush him down the middle because he'll anchor. I love his aggressive style of play, but I think he gets out of control. I think he can move people at the point in the run game. In pass pro, he has to win early. If he doesn't get his hands locked on you early, that's where he has struggles. I didn't see a left tackle athlete. I saw more of a right tackle or potential inside at guard.
Interesting.
Because of his demeanor and the grit and toughness that he plays with. But I just didn't see the pass pro athlete at left tackle. When I mean win early in the down, he has to get his hands on him. If not, he gets his hands on him, they're done. But if he has to take a deep set and he has to mirror or try to adjust with his feet, he lunges and he just doesn't have the athletic skill set to regain position, in my opinion.
You know, it's funny that you say that. As I watched them, and they are completely different sizes, but I got the sense of our buddy Dwayne Jones being able just to engulf people. Obviously, when you're 340 or 380 or whatever he is, that's a different story because you're locking on to guys that you outweigh by 100 pounds. But I got that sense in terms of the locking on part of it. So you don't think he's as good an athlete as Dwayne Jones?
I didn't think Dwayne Jones was a good athlete. He's just hard to get around because he's so massive.
Yeah, well, I thought that made him a good athlete just because he could move as well as he did at that size. Interesting. All right, so where is this a day 3 guy for you?
I'm going to hold judgment, but he's borderline for me. Day 2, day 3.
Yeah, I was excited when I watched him, and then I saw some of the other media takes. I was like, oh, okay. Well, let's see what old Rick says about it because all right, we'll do more homework and see how the Senior Bowl goes for him, but that's why we're having these conversations. All right, so we got one $1 bet in there. I'll ask you quickly before we leave. Of the quarterbacks, Joe Milton, Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., Michael Pratt, Sam Hartman. and Carter Bradley, which I haven't seen him yet, but I will before we get there to South Alabama. Which quarterback has the best week?
Penix.
You think so?
Yes.
Unfortunately for Michael Penix, there won't be bad weather there. It's supposed to be pretty sunny, so he won't have an opportunity to show that he can spin it in the bad weather. A few years ago,
yeah, don't worry about all the rain games he played out in Seattle. There's no rain ever out there.
That's a good point.
Yeah, Jesus, what am I doing with my life right now?
Don't worry about the Oregon State game. That didn't matter.
No, don't worry about it.
They didn't play great in it for what it's worth. But
okay, it's all rainbows and butterflies out there from a weather standpoint in Seattle.
Yeah. Plus, you can learn more at a Senior Bowl practice with wet footballs than you can at an actual football game.
Okay.